From eking out a split decision win to fears he mightn't defend his belt, Dana White reveals Henry Cejudo will replace Aljamain Sterling at UFC 292. First off is a quick recap of the main event of UFC 288. The Prudential Center in Newark was the battleground for bantamweight immortality at UFC 288. Henry Cejudo was making his grand return after a freaking 3-year hiatus. The former two-division champ was itching to reclaim the title he had never lost, like a warrior on a mission. But standing in his way was the reigning bantamweight champion, Aljamain Sterling. The Funkmaster had notched 2 consecutive title defenses leading up to the fight, including a split decision victory against Peter Yan and a second-round TKO win over TJ Dillashaw. This was an epic match on paper, and it actually played out that way right from the get-go in the octagon. Cejudo executed an early takedown with ease, but somehow couldn't capitalize on the opportunity. Sterling secured his own takedown later in the round and took Cejudo's back, punctuating the round with an elbow strike just before the buzzer sounded. Cejudo entered the second round with his head held high, though, showing no signs of being bowed. He displayed adaptability and made adjustments, resulting in a closely contested match. Both fighters had their shining moments, and there was a compelling case for either to take the round. The intense competition between the two titans persisted throughout the championship rounds. Sterling repeatedly attempted takedowns from a distance, which proved mostly ineffective. Nonetheless, he found success in close-quarters combat with his dirty boxing. Cejudo showcased his flexibility in fending off some of those takedown attempts. But in the end, his defense efforts just weren't enough to secure him a win in the eyes of the cage-side judges. Sterling eked out a split decision win after the judges were called to give the verdict. 2 judges scored the bout 48-47 in Sterling's favor, while the third judge scored the same 48-47 score in Cejudo's favor. Though the margin of victory was only 1 round, this performance was enough for Sterling to get the nod and achieve arguably the biggest win of his career. Sterling not only managed to defend his bantamweight championship at UFC 288, but also added a major bullet point to his already decorated resume. He now stands as the first bantamweight title holder to successfully defend the belt 3 times. "Hats off to Henry Cejudo," Sterling said after the bout. "I wasn't sure which way the decision was going to go. I thought I had it 3-2. I wish I could have done a little bit better. Henry's a fucking dog. He's a legend." Sadly for Cejudo, this loss left him questioning whether his fight with Sterling would ultimately mark the end of his career. The former Olympic gold medalist and 2-division champion had hoped to once again have gold around his waist. He thought he could easily reclaim the bantamweight title in his very first fight after a 3-year absence. But that just proved to be an uphill task for Triple C. He did come close, though. "He's tougher than what I thought. He's a gamer," Cejudo said. "It was close, but Aljamain did his job. He got the victory. It sucks. I hate losing, but it's also been 3 years." After falling short in his bid to recapture the bantamweight title, the 36-year-old admitted he was a little confused about his future at UFC. After the fight, Cejudo took off his gloves in a move that is often considered a sign of retirement. During his post-fight interview with UFC color commentator Joe Rogan, Triple C hinted at retiring, but in the same breath, asserted that there was still a fight in him to return to the top. He said he would discuss the next chapter of his career with his wife and UFC president Dana White. "I'm a little confused right now. If I'm not first, I'm last. If I can't beat Aljo, my biggest goal was to go up to 145 pounds. If I didn't get the victory over Aljo, I just don't know where that puts me. It's just hard, man. I'm such a competitor." Now, after beating Cejudo, Sterling was set to defend his title against rising star Sean O'Malley on August 19th at UFC 292 in Boston. Not only did he verbally accept the bout, but he actually seemed enthusiastic and looking forward to the day of the fight. In fact, moments after his win over Triple C, Sterling turned his attention to bantamweight challenger Sean O'Malley, who had made his way into the cage, stripped off his jacket, and went on a heated face-off with the champ. Things almost turned ugly after O'Malley got into an altercation with Merab Dvalishvili, Sterling's teammate, and the UFC's #1 ranked bantamweight, who had stolen his jacket. Luckily, UFC security stepped in quickly and separated the duo before the situation escalated further. Now, this bout would have marked a 3.5-month turnaround for the Funkmaster. but recent developments could see him vacate the belt. During a post-fight conference following the Dern vs. Hill card on May 20th, UFC President Dana White addressed a barrage of questions regarding the UFC 292 main event pitting Aljamain Sterling against Suga Sean O'Malley. He said while Sterling was willing to square it off with O'Malley, his body must agree with his mind ahead of the fight. You'll recall that Sterling has had issues with lingering injuries in the past and notably had neck surgery a few years ago. His injuries appear to have gotten worse during his win over Henry Cejudo at UFC 288. Sterling even cautioned on his weekly Scraps video podcast that he may not make a sick, insane turnaround. "I'm still injured, like with my legs banged up," Sterling said. "My bicep still sucks. I'm supposed to get another MRI on that. I'm trying to get to this fight in August. This will be a sick, insane turnaround. But where there's a will, there's a way." Of course, it's clear that Sterling is eager to fight O'Malley and will do all it takes to be ready by August. But there are no guarantees he'll be ready by then. During a recent interview on the MMA Hour, Sterling spoke a great deal about the August timeframe. He acknowledged that a bout against O'Malley would be highly favorable for him, but the champ admitted he may have prematurely made such a statement. "It's kind of like Manel Kape versus Deveso Figueiredo," Sterling said. "He thought he was good to fight, and then his eye, whatever. Now, when Cejudo heard that Sterling might vacate his belt, he immediately got in touch with Dana White, offering to replace Aljamain to fight O'Malley at UFC 292. Though the former multi-division champion had initially contemplated retiring, he seems to have changed his mind and wants another shot at the UFC title. This is what Dana had to say during the press conference.
Henry Cejudo calls me and says, "This little pussy doesn't want to fight. I'll take the fight. I'm throwing my hat in right now. Let's do it. I'll fight O'Malley."
Don't let Cejudo's, interesting choice of names fool you. He clearly has a lot of respect for Sterling. But it is pretty clear that Aljamain's fight with O'Malley being so soon to his fight with Cejudo is a pretty tall order. The guy really hasn't had a lot of time to recover, especially after the tough fight that Cejudo gave him. Sometimes, fighters can go 6 months to a year between fights. Asking him to fight O'Malley so soon may really affect Sterling's performance. That being said, these kinds of expectations should probably be seen as coming with that coveted champion title. Everyone wants a piece of the champ. Following this turn of events, fans have expressed concerns that Sterling might not defend his belt come August. We can't wait to see how Aljamain Sterling fares leading up to the fight, because you know it hurts to see him vacate the belt after just a 3-month break. If Sterling won't be ready by August, chances are that UFC will match Cejudo up with O'Malley to determine the next title contender. So from eking out a split decision win to fears he mightn't defend his belt, Dana White reveals Henry Cejudo to replace Aljamain Sterling at UFC 292.